So I just want to give you some information around the funding because I'm mindful in education that we talk in these terms as if everybody understands what we're talking about, and actually sometimes we get brought up short quite regularly saying, what are you talking about? So what is Pupil Premium? Pupil Premium was brought in 2011, and it was previously called the Disadvantaged Fund and Opportunities Fund. And at that time, the government had looked at those children who were successful from different demographics and thought actually with a bit of extra funding, perhaps they can also have the nice to haves. And it was very much then about the children who didn't have the nice to haves because of the level of income in the family. It was the added extras. That has changed quite significantly over time. And now we are increasingly being expected to show the impact of that spend, particularly in their standards at the end of year 6 and year 2 for us. I'll come back to that in a minute. It's gone through different sort of iterations. So at one point we were narrowing the gap, and then another point we were closing the gap, and now we're diminishing the difference. And it's all government rhetoric nonsense, to be quite frank. It's about actually what we can do to make children successful. This is a slide I have it up on my wall in my office because I think this is something that I think is so powerful. The difference between equality and equity. And quite often we hear it from the children, but we also hear it from the parents. That everyone gets the same. Well, as you can see, if everyone gets the same, the child who can't see over the fence still can't see over the fence. But if it's equitable, then what we're trying to do is enable all of the children to see over the fence. And that's what Pupil Premium is really trying to help us to do. It's about leveling the playing field and giving the children what they need to maximize their life chances. And actually, I was working with another head teacher in Riverbridge, and there was a particularly obstreperous year 5 boy who was, everyone was really unfair, I was really unfair, the head was really unfair, everyone was really unfair. But actually, he happened to have this picture on his desk because the child was giving forth about why this other child was being allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And suddenly, the head just said, can I just draw your attention to this? And the little boy suddenly, it was like a spark had gone off and went, oh, I don't need those 3 boxes, but she does. Yes, so we got there. So actually, in some ways, the children find it easier to understand more than the adults. So this is just some background information around funding. A Surrey child, this is average, because I know Sarah's going to pick me up and say, actually, not primary and secondary are funded differently, and that's true. A Surrey child is funded approximately £4,250 per year. So every child that's eligible for Pupil Premium in the primary school, we get another £1,320, and we have to demonstrate impact of that spend. And really, ideally, we are expected to see what they can do in terms of closing the gap, in terms of being able to perform the same as those children who aren't disadvantaged, as they say. But I think this is really relevant and interesting contextual information. The average, if you look at that, how much we have to spend on our children to enable them to be successful, the average independent school, and bearing in mind, I think some of the Pupil Premium funding, I think perhaps the government looked at those children who are from much more privileged backgrounds and thought, actually, what can we do to support? The average independent school costs between £12,000 and £15,000 a year, and we have 4,000. Primary age children are funded less than secondary for reasons that nobody can actually help me to understand. Now, it's very variable. So Tower Hamlets, for example, they get £6,900 per child, compared to Surrey's £4,250. It's not that much more expensive to run a school in London as it is to run a school in Surrey. Our teachers all have to be paid. Our housing is not cheap. But those are some of the contextual challenges that we're in when we're trying to actually be able to show impact of spend in terms of the income that's generated per child. So which children? So if the family is eligible for any of the following, they are eligible for Pupil Premium. And one of the challenges we have with the universal infant free school meals that came in is that suddenly every child was entitled to a free meal. So how are we able to identify who's eligible for Pupil Premium? Because suddenly that particular lever was taken from us, and we're reliant on the parent to tell us, or we can do a check if they give us permission. Now, some parents are very proud and don't want to know, don't want us to know. And so we have to find all sorts of interesting ways to actually sort of try and encourage the parents to disclose that actually their child may be eligible. And we do lots of different things. We give a free PE kit, we subsidise trips, we do all sorts of things to try and actually enable us to know, so we can actually get some sense of what the provision needs to be for their children. So just looking at the provision for children and our Pupil Premium children, the ones I've highlighted are the ones where I think Bridge Builders really, really makes a particular impact. This notion of aspiration, the notion of self-awareness, resilience and confidence. Because those attributes are best facilitated with adults who model some of those attributes and are able to give the space for the child to talk it through. Whilst we constantly would be, I think there are some tacit messages that we give all the time, but to be able to actually talk about these particular aspects in a one-on-one session is really powerful. And that's, for me, in terms of the provision that we're looking at for our Pupil Premium children, I think those 4 elements are really powerful. And certainly when I'm held to account for the spend of Pupil Premium, I can say, yes, I can talk to you about the progress that my children have made. However, I can also tell you, here's a child that wouldn't walk into a room without the world knowing that he was there and causing quite a lot of upset on the way in, and now he can. That is progress. So let's be really clear about what we mean by progress. And as an Ofsted inspector myself, I know full well how they can be about standards, but actually I think we in schools need to perhaps become more adept at really articulating progress on a much wider basis. So one of the things, and we are constantly thinking about what can we do to make the difference. That's why we get up in the morning, and that's not just Pupil Premium children, that's every child, that's our vocation. One of the things that we've brought in, and it's such a simple thing, and Ashford Park will probably tell me they're doing already. We have said to our teachers, you need to know your Pupil Premium children really well, and you need to make sure that every day you look that child in the eye, say good morning, you smile, you have an open countenance with them, say how was your evening, how was your weekend, how was your day? Because sometimes that's the only time they get that encounter. And actually it is making a difference. So it's children who come in hypervigilant, strung out, who knows what's gone on already in the morning, because some of our children are living in very chaotic homes. And actually that sense of presence and connection, saying, I'm here and I know you're okay, that just stills them for that moment. It doesn't always last the day, but it makes a difference.